In this episode, we speak with someone who not only ran a 70-person sales organisation, but actually had a part in the cult movie, The Room. Hi everyone, and welcome to Habit Hackers Rebel Radio, episode 6. On this episode, we sit down with Dan Janjigan. Now, Dan has built a 70-person sales organisation and knows a lot about sales, the fundamentals of how to sell your service, your product, and as well how to lead people in that process. And he's got some real great insights into that. The timing of this episode is pretty great. So many people now have heard of the movie The Room. Dan plays the part of Chris R in the movie. Now, James Franco has just made a movie called The Disaster Artist. That movie is about the making of The Room. James Franco has just won Best Actor at the Golden Globes for that movie.
Now, best worst movie ever made.
It's the best worst movie I've ever seen.
Citizen Kane, a bad movie.
Bad movies.
Well, because it's a particular thing. That's like a particular thing where, there's a lot of bad movies that you just don't watch. Like The Room is very watchable. Like, its badness is so bad. You just want to keep watching.
It's unbelievable. It's like watching a
but I think it's more
2-hour train wreck. It's like,
it is, but like with heart. It's been going for 14 and a half years now. So like, that's the thing. Like, look, I loved.
Did you see the movie?
I love The Revenant, right? The Revenant's an amazing movie, but it's not. People don't go and watch it for
over
14
and over
years.
Yeah, you don't watch it over and over again.
There's something about this bad movie that you just want to keep watching.
If you haven't seen it, definitely have a look. Dan, what was it like being on the set of The Room?
So, yeah, basically it was, the experience on set was interesting because, we were never given the script to read. So I was given the page for that day, and he was adamant that none of the actors could read the script. So nobody knew what was coming, what had led up to that point, and what was going to come after. So in acting and in movie creation, things are often shot out of sequence. So I didn't know, I was under the assumption that there would be other scenes that led up to my scene and that there would be other scenes after that, right? It makes sense. Here's this drug dealer that's going after a guy on a roof, which makes no sense, over money that he's owed for drugs that were sold. So you'd figure there'd be something before that shows the sale of the drugs or something, and maybe something afterwards that shows that resolution, and there was neither. But because I didn't know that, I was on set for almost 2 weeks, even though I filmed that part, God knows how many times. I mean, we started filming in an alley, which made a lot more sense. And then, believe it or not, after I left the set, after 2 weeks of doing this, he had me come back to film it again on the roof. And that in and of itself was a story. The interesting thing was, after we saw the premiere, we didn't have the reaction that they showed in the movie theaters in The Disaster Artist. It wasn't like people were cheering and screaming. It was quite the opposite. It was crickets, as we'd say here in the States. Nobody was making any noise. It was very uncomfortable. And about 2 weeks later, one of the actors in the movie called me and said, "Hey, dude, you've got to come down and see what's going on." And again, if you're familiar with the movie, it was the guy, Scott is his real name. He played Mike, and he was the chocolate guy, right? The guy who, if you've seen the movie, the guy who had the chocolate scene with Michelle. So he convinced me to come down, and it was crazy. I had people asking for autographs, wanting to take pictures. People were dressed up as my character. They're dressed up as Lisa. They're dressed up as Tommy. And I just didn't know what was going on. And he was filming this. He was kind of documenting it at the time. And I guess it was just over that period of weeks, or I don't know if it'd been a month. I don't remember the timeline at this point, but it developed this cult following already. And I remember asking people at that time how many times they'd seen the movie, and some of those guys had seen it 24 times. It was crazy.
And did you ever suspect that it would become what it has become over the last 15, 16 years?
I didn't think anything would ever come of it. I mean, it's funny. After a while, you start to realize this thing has become viral, but you don't expect it to continue to go. At some point you figure there's an end, but every time you think that the end has come, there's something new that comes out. There's a guy, Rick Harper from Rockhaven Documentaries that is doing a documentary on The Room that I've actually seen. It hasn't been released yet, but it's excellent. That's coming out now. There's been at least 2 or 3 books that have come out about the movie. Then, of course, James Franco's deal came out. And then, of course, once that's come out, then now there's the Golden Globes that just happened, and now they're talking about Oscar buzz. There just continues to be these little things. I've got there's a group out in Dallas that contacted me, and they're doing a parody of The Room on stage, which I'm hoping to get a chance to see. It's actually coming out on Friday of this week. Yeah, I call it the gift that keeps on giving.
Now, there's a rumor flying about that the director of The Room wasn't actually Tommy. Can you shed some light on that?
Well, it's not I wouldn't call that a rumor as much. One of my very good friends on set was a gentleman by the name of Sandy Schicler, who was actually played by Seth Rogen in the Disaster Artist. And if you've watched Disaster Artist, you see that Sandy does a lot of directing, right? He's the guy behind the scenes, in that famous commercial for the movie where it takes 67 takes and Tommy keeps going up and doing it. Sandy's directing. So it's funny. He and I have spoken a lot lately, as recently as 2 days ago, we were chatting. And he's got a book coming out. And I asked him, I said, Sandy, why would you want, because Sandy's got some amazing directing credits, and he's done a lot. He did a lot of stuff with Fast and the Furious and the TV series and a few other, he's done quite a bit if you look him up. But I said, why would you want to be known as the director of the worst movie ever? He goes, Dan, you don't understand. He said, that movie has gained huge fame because we took something that was horrible and we made it into something that was palatable in such a way that people love it. And he said, that is not something that I would be ashamed of being noted for. And the fact that that's just being passed over is something that, he takes very personally. So, that makes sense to me. I get that. The movie is definitely got a huge amount of acclaim in a very odd way. But, I would agree with him. He was the guy behind the camera most of the time. And even if Tommy was directing it at times, Sandy was probably the one that was most responsible for putting together the final product.
Let's change gears a little bit and talk about your successes and the point you're at in your career and the moments you're most proud of.
I've got a very random background. I started Southwestern selling books back in 1991. I got recruited. My first summer was in 92, actually. And I sold for 5 summers. I remember when I first sat down, it was a scary thought for me because, I have a Middle Eastern dad who basically wouldn't talk to people at the door, so I really couldn't perceive how people would be, accepted in these door-to-door sales roles. But then I was in this interview with Sandy Matthews back in 1991. And I remember there was a guy, Brad Ledwith, there. And she said, oh, yeah, Brad made all this money last summer. And I remember thinking, wow, if that guy made that, I could do it. Which is kind of horrible, but, whatever. And Brad's still a friend of mine. Hope he's listening. And hello, Brad. But anyway, I ended up going out, had a very good summer. I ended up in the top 10, I think, that first year in sales in the company and or rookies, I guess. And went on to do it for 4 more years. I actually sold through the 1996 summer. So 5 summers in total. And at that point, I kind of developed my baseline of what I believe today is my direct selling knowledge. It's funny, I was thinking about this yesterday. I went to a great college for a great degree there, Cal Poly, for a marketing and business degree. But, if I say that I got anything from college, I would say that my Southwestern education trumped my formal education because, what I've been able to use to get ahead and learn and run my businesses and do what I've done, I'd say really came from Southwestern. So now jump ahead, quite a few years. In 2005, I was introduced to Family Heritage. So jump ahead to 2005 when I started with Family Heritage. So what Family Heritage does, we sell supplemental insurance. So in the United States, obviously we're different than most countries, including Scotland, right? We have healthcare that's paid for by buying policies through insurance companies. And the problem is that insurance companies, even if you have a great plan here, and there's so many issues with our plans, it's not even funny. But even if you have a great plan that pays every doctor bill and medical bill that you have, it never pays you anything. So, imagine going through something like cancer where you couldn't work for 6 months to a year. You still got to, pay your day-to-day bills. You've still got to make your mortgage payment or your rent payment you've got to pay for food, gas. If you've got a child in college, you've got to pay their tuition. I mean, those things don't suddenly stop. And what Family Heritage is they pay money directly to the policyholder so that they can pay those other things and that they can continue to have life as they know it. And this is a fundamentally important thing in the United States because the number one cause of bankruptcy for the last 50 years out here has been medically related bankruptcies. And 80%, almost 80% of the people that declare bankruptcies have great health insurance. So that's confusing to a lot of people, but the reason that they have to declare bankruptcy is because they can't afford their other bills, even if they've got this great medical insurance. So that's what we do. That's the product that we sell. I guess the organization that I've got today, we've now got offices in several states. I've got an organization called Gridiron Financial, which is a brokerage of Family Heritage. Annually, we're in the top 3 to 5% of all brokerages. So we do, very, very well. And I think fundamentally that growth has come from what we did at Southwestern, or learned at Southwestern.
So you work with Southwestern 80 hours a week, knocking on strangers' doors, selling children's books. That can be a brutal 80 hours. But what was the main thing? That can be a brutal 80 hours. It can also be an incredible 80 hours. But what was the biggest thing that you took from that?
I think the biggest thing I learned, I could break down habits for you, but I think the biggest thing I learned was the idea of systems. The idea that systems, the entire world runs on the law of large numbers, right? The law of averages. If you've got systems in place that that work, all you have to do at that point is expand those same systems, and you should get percentage-wise the same amount of results, right? So to give you an example, in Southwestern, I was taught you had to give 30 demonstrations a day, which was in a 6-day week. We'd work 82 hours a week. So that'd be about 180 demos we would give every week. And we knew that if we did that, we would get X amount of sales because we'd gotten X amount of sit downs. And, that would lead you to your success throughout the year. In Family Heritage, it's the same thing. I tell my people, you've got to give 6 demonstrations a day. It's a different product. So that's 30 demonstrations a week. We know that, even a brand new sales rep, if they show the product properly, they're going to make out of those 30 demonstrations, they're going to make 6 sales, 5 to 6 sales, and they're going to, make about $1,500 a week. The numbers translate exactly the same because the systems work the same. And those same systems we use in our recruiting process, we use in the way that we train. I guess the easiest way I would describe it is this. You could take a bag of horse manure and go door to door with it. And if you go see enough people, somebody's going to buy that bag of manure. It's not, they'll use it for compost. They'll use it for something. But the better the product, the better the service, the higher percentage of people are going to buy. Right. So if people can fundamentally understand that concept, that bag of manure is going to get sold at some point, and most people will agree that at some point somebody will buy it. Right. Then at that point, you're working the law of averages, and the law of averages just increases as your quality of product or service goes up.
And what would you say to those just starting their own business?
In starting a business, one of the major difficulties is you've got so many hats you have to wear, right? You've got to be the person that does the marketing, you've got to be the person that, is doing accounts payable, accounts receivable. You have to do your own accounting. You have to figure out taxes. You have to figure out brochures and advertising. You've got to figure out customer service. There's so many hats you have to wear. And this is where most people fail in business, is that they don't realize that they've got to do that. And it's very difficult to be a jack of all trades. You want to find a way to specialize in the thing that you're especially good at. That's why franchises do so well. There's a great book by Michael Gerber called E-Myths. And one of the things I respect so much about that book is because, where franchises do well and where small businesses fail is that small businesses will put so much emphasis or effort on the owner and what the owner does to create success. And you ask yourself, well, why would a Subway franchise succeed where a personally owned, passionate owner of a business fails, right? And in the United States, the stats are pretty clear. 90% of small businesses will fail in 3 years, where 90% of franchises will succeed just fine after that period of time. The reason is because of systems. right? If I have a small business, generally I'm the one that's kind of doing everything. I fill in the gaps here and there. On the flip side, if I'm a Subway sandwich owner, I could walk into a Subway at 10 o'clock at night. There could be not a manager to be seen. There could be an 18-year-old kid working that counter, but that 18-year-old kid knows exactly what his or her job is. They know exactly what needs to be done. And if that person quits, fails, takes off, falls dead the next day, they can replace somebody else with a manual that says, this is exactly what you need to learn. It's simple. It's replicatable. And that's where these companies are able to be successful, is that it doesn't all depend on one person who, if they got sick, would bring down the entire tent.
So let's talk on sales. I know a number of people listening to this will find a real gap in their mind when it comes to sales. I think a lot of people think of salesman as that used car lot, that sleazy salesman, that scam artist. I think that's the worst of sales when people think of it. But sales can be something very different. As you know, it's fundamental to any business. If you don't have sales, you don't have a business. But maybe you could talk on that. I mean, what are the fundamentals of sales? How do you think about sales? Why are sales important?
Success in our product, success in selling our product is, again, first learning the foundational things that are going to make people successful at selling it, which is learning a practiced, prepared presentation, right? It's not just learning the words, right, that are on a sheet of paper. It's about understanding the nuances that you say, the little, if I'm talking to somebody and I want them to say, hey, what do you think is the most important thing to somebody besides the disease itself? I may look at them and make this symbol. And they look at me and they go, oh, money. Absolutely. Money, right? And we teach this, right? We teach people to rub their fingers like this because it allows us to take the people that we're selling to on a journey. There's two kinds of sales fundamentally. There's inside and outside sales. And what makes this so different is that inside sales is, people that do inside sales consider themselves to be great salespeople. And I got to be honest, I don't. Inside salesperson is somebody who works for a software company. Somebody calls and hey, this is Dan. I'm calling to get some Adobe Photoshop software. Great. I may try and upsell them, but that person called me knowing what they wanted and that they want to do some business. Even somebody that walks on a used car lot, they know what they want. On the flip side, the antithesis of that is you've got a situation where somebody is, trying to create business where that business did not exist before, right? So I may go and, try and sell somebody cancer insurance or sell them a set of books. But when I knocked on that door, when I visited that business, when I saw that employee group, they weren't thinking about buying books or insurance or knives or whatever it may be. So my job is to create a need and help fill that need. And that fundamentally, that process is so important, not just in sales, but in every aspect of our lives. Think about it. A teacher does that when they sit down with a student and they're trying to get that student to understand the value of learning the algebra they're teaching. Or if I go and I see a beautiful woman on the other side of a bar and I decide, hey, this is somebody I want to approach. The details of approaching that woman are going to be the same for me as I would in a sales situation, right? I might get pre-approach, find out from her friend what she's all about. Then I'm going to approach her. I'm going to go out and I'm going to, give her my best line, right? I'm going to establish rapport. So, again, you go through that process, and that sales process is not just about selling product. It's about selling you. It's about selling your ideas, and it's important in every aspect of what we do.
If you're listening to this point, thank you. I appreciate you taking the 30, 40 minutes out of your schedule, out of your day to listen in and hopefully grow. If you enjoyed it, please get involved in the Habit Hackers private Facebook group. This is a group of entrepreneurs and people looking to grow and learn the right habits, and a great community in which to share your thoughts, hear others, and learn and grow. We also have habithackerplanner.com. We have a new planner out, launching in the beginning of 2018. This is a planner that, unlike other planners, allows you to form the habits that are going to cultivate success in your life. It helps you cultivate gratitude, goal setting, time management, personal management within time, and so much more than that. Please check it out, habithackerplanner.com.